Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is all about some of the considerations that we may need to think about before undertaking a contest prep. So this is definitely my wheelhouse. I have been doing this for about 5 or 6 years now as far as the competition stuff goes. And I feel like a lot of people are really quick to make the decision to hop on stage. Today, I really want to outline a handful of things, probably 10 or so, that you should be considering before you make that final decision to, should I actually prep? The first thing is understanding your why, or what is the motivation behind competing. I think a lot of people will really race into this decision without really knowing why they do it. So some of the reasons I think why we should not undertake a prep is if you feel like you've been peer pressured. Maybe a friend is competing, maybe your favorite social media influencer is competing, or perhaps you feel like this is the only way that I can achieve my body composition goals. So if those are some of the reasons that you've thought about why you'd like to compete, I would actually say no, that's not really a good enough why. On the other hand, I think some of the reasons that would justify, stepping on stage would be that you're doing this as a means of self-development or self-improvement. Perhaps you've had a history of poor nutrition, poor physical activity, and just not many positive lifestyle choices. So that would absolutely be a good reason to prep. I think something else would be if you really feel like you need to have a goal and there's something missing in your life. I know for me, taking a couple of years not competing, I've definitely been feeling like I need a goal. So I think that's a really reasonable justification for why stepping on stage might be a positive thing. So the other two reasons might be just embracing a new challenge. Maybe you've been kind of just going through the motions for a little while and you want something to kind of push you to the next level. And that leads me to my next recommendation or justification for competing, which would be if there is some kind of benefit to you if you are an athlete and it's going to help with your overall performance. So something else that you need to consider is your mental health and well-being. So I think a lot of people completely overlook this aspect of contest prep and they really just consider their physical health before starting. So maybe they're very active, they have a good diet, they recover really well, they're doing all of the things that kind of lead to good physical health, but completely overlook the idea that maybe their mental health is struggling. Now, contest prep is not for the weak of heart. And I really think that this is an area that we absolutely should consider. When we're prepping, it's very normal for everything that we kind of feel outside of dieting life to be compounded. So if you have a poor self-image or you already might be struggling with your relationship with food, then contest prep is not going to make this any better. I assure you, as somebody that's struggled with that in my past, that is not a good reason to actually start prepping. In fact, I would highly recommend that you go and seek some support in that area to help you be a happier, person, to enjoy your body, to love your body for what it is, regardless of your conditioning or leanness. So the next consideration is, what are you expecting to get out of this? Do you have a specific goal in mind with taking the stage? So bodybuilding is a very subjective sport, and I know it can be very difficult sometimes to gracefully accept criticism, especially when you have worked so incredibly hard. You've slaved in the gym for hours and hours to bring your best physique. So just have a bit of a goal in mind. I know for me, mine is usually business related. If I was to compete again, it would be absolutely to encourage people that have never done this to give it a go. For you, it might be just, taking some kind of lesson away from this, being present and enjoying that experience, being really open to the feedback that you might get, but also just be really happy and content in your body regardless, and know that whatever the outcome or whatever the result from your competition, you are absolutely good with that feedback regardless. So the next thing to consider is how to balance your priorities. So from experience, this can feel like a full-time job. So if you've already got a full-time job, then just make sure that you are kind of ready to work out how you might balance all of these competing interests and responsibilities. Prep absolutely is going to, at some point, interfere with your family dynamic, your social life, potentially your job or school. So just be ready to have a think about that and decide how you are going to balance all of those things so that you don't get tunnel vision towards the end and completely neglect everything else that's important to your life. So that leads me to the next point, which is how are you going to balance all of these things? I really love the expression fail to plan and plan to fail. So go into this making sure that you have a game plan. If you do have a lot of other responsibilities, I know for me personally, we have several businesses to manage, we have kids, we have relationships and business relationships that are still going to need to be nurtured throughout that time. So have a plan, really look at your schedule, work out if there are things that need to kind of go by the wayside. Is there anything that you can kind of reduce the responsibility for so that this doesn't become something that's completely overwhelming and end up not being the positive, enjoyable experience that you had intended it to be? The next one's kind of an obvious one, and it's, are you prepared for the financial cost? Depending on the federation that you choose to compete with, this can be an incredibly costly venture. I compete with the WBFF, but I've also competed as an IFBB pro, and the costs are quite different. But for me, for instance, as a WBFF competitor, we have significantly higher entry fees for each division. I think it's about $500 or $600. Then obviously the location that you have to go to, you need to be mindful of the hotel expenses and costs. You have hair, makeup, tanning. In the case of the WBFF, we don't just have show day, we have media days and athlete days and registrations where you're expected to be looking a certain way. And there's hair and makeup that goes into that. There's gowns and all the works to make sure that these are really high quality professional events. So keep that in mind and just make sure that you have a game plan again for the financial cost involved with competing. Next, are you prepared for the sacrifice? I know with the growing interest in this sport, and there seems to be hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of competitors nowadays, but I think social media can tend to paint a very positive image of what competitions are like, but the reality is they are tough, coming from firsthand experience competing at a world level. So just be ready for that sacrifice and the struggles and demands of contest prep. So just to talk about that on a personal note, for me, it turns out that competing actually wasn't worth the sacrifice. With everything that I had going on a couple of years ago, it was just far too much commitment, and competing is quite a selfish sport. So I actually took 2 years off to kind of, take a step back and relearn me, recognize that my body wasn't necessarily what would guarantee me happiness, it wasn't what would guarantee me success, and it certainly wasn't what was going to guarantee my worthiness. I think taking some time to think about some of those things and recognizing that it is quite a sacrifice, and figure out if competing is actually something that you are ready for. So the next thing to consider is making the right decisions around coaching. So the first thing that I'm going to say here is that whoever you decide to work with, please, please, please make sure that they are an evidence-based, science-based nutrition expert. There are a lot of woo coaching teams out there that really base their coaching antics on, I don't even know what they base it on, just feels, I guess. So when you go through this process, please do your research, do your homework. Don't be afraid to ask them, what are your qualifications? What is your experience? And also ask for, past examples. Like, can you reach out to some of the people that they've previously worked with and coach as a reference? At the end of the day, coaching is not necessarily going to be a cheap part of this exercise. So you want to make sure that you are trusting this whole process with somebody that is knowledgeable and experienced, that isn't going to do harm to your physical health. So on that note, shameless plug, obviously we do have a fantastic coaching team here at Team BioLane. Having that extra accountability is so crucial, even for somebody that has competed and prepped themselves. If I could go back and do it again, I probably would have somebody prep me, because of the psychological difficulties that will pop up from time to time throughout a prep, it can be really hard just to manage it all on your own. So I would highly recommend any of the coaches here at Team BioLane. Or on the other hand, if you're looking for something that's a little bit more affordable, but still an approach that employs scientific principles, then Carbon Diet Coach, our nutrition coaching app, is also more than appropriate for doing the prep. The only thing that you would need as an addition would actually be your peak week plan. We also have that all outlined in our books. But again, it can be very handy to have somebody actually execute that for you so that you can completely relax and then just enjoy the experience and do the work in the gym. So the next thing is make sure you have a great support system. I know that a lot of the people that I am friends with that are competitors would not have been able to do this contest prep if they didn't have a really supportive spouse or really encouraging family and friends, because it is really difficult. So having that extra support at home or a team of people that you can kind of go and train with to give you a little bit of a boost for when you might be feeling a little flat can also be incredibly valuable. If you have somebody that doesn't want to encourage you to compete, or that is really critical of the idea, it can be kind of difficult. So really give that consideration, and are you going to have the supports for when it comes time to execute one of the most difficult things that you'll probably ever do in your life. So the last thing really is just make sure that you are prepared and have a post-diet plan. A lot of the time, the mistakes that I have seen from amateur competitors is that they don't give any thought to what happens after the show. So I think having an idea of a weight that you can maintain that is sustainable is kind of the first port of call once you get done with prep. So to give you an idea, for me, as soon as I finish competing, I'm probably going to be at a stage weight of 62 kilos, just hypothetically. Immediately, I'm trying to get my body weight back up by about 10% because that is realistic and sustainable for me. I used to have this idea that if I would prep, get on stage, be super lean, that was just something I could then maintain indefinitely. And that is so far from the truth. Especially as a fitness or figure competitor, women are not meant to be that lean year round, especially as a drug-free lifetime natural athlete. So please, please, please be real with what weight you would like to maintain after the show, because it's likely that whatever you step on stage with is not something that you are going to be able to maintain indefinitely. So guys, please be honest with yourself about competing. Answer all of these questions that I've brought to you today as honestly as you can, and hopefully that will put you in the best position to have a successful contest prep and just to make sure whether it's actually the right decision for you and your body. So guys, when done in a positive and healthy way, and ideally an evidence-based approach to your prep is preferred, it's going to teach you so much about yourself, your capabilities and your true strength. For me, I have learned so much about myself as a competitor over the last few years. It will transform you physically, mentally, and emotionally. Good luck.